I'll give you some brief explanations of what we'll be showing you here. This is one of the original pieces that hung in the visitor center. It shows you just an example of the static displays they had at one time, and then get a chance to show you how much things have changed. Again, the original color of the window frames. And as you enter, to the left will be the welcome desk. Schedule of events, which actually also shows a little bit of weather information, both live and at a pretty significant moment in time. And one thing that was noted in our media tour a little while ago was the fact that the window frames themselves are much different than what you would have the last time visitors were inside. Much lower here, so it's less obstruction in your sight lines. And of course you can see the flight line from here. This one was pretty neat, of course, how it looks now. And then it looked when the first flight took place. And this is going to be a quick tour. We're not going to, you got to come here to see it. All the exhibits now are very tactile. A chance for visitors to touch and feel things. Those who show you. And this, of course, the original Daniels photo has been colorized. And we're doing this tour here on Friday, and the ceiling tiles actually, when we walked in, you saw the remaining ceiling tiles were still stacked up outside. They're getting ready to install those as soon as we finish up here. Some of the information about the energy efficiency of the building, the geothermal system, insulation that's been added into the ceilings so that it will be much more energy efficient. Now, something to note, the color differences in the exhibits and the way it's been designed is the maroon colors show events that took place in the Wright's history in Ohio, or maroon, and then blue here on the Outer Banks. So, an example, it's a chance to see, learn the Wright's family history. This was a really neat, as a toy, and this drawing that's been turned into actual model of the toy. That was an inspiration called the Bat. It was an inspiration for Wilbur and Orville. Their father brought them when they were young. He had some of the more interactive so you can touch and feel. Above us, as noted, those are the original steel or metal grates tiles that were reincorporated in. But above us are models of flight, starting with a seagull as you enter the exhibits area, and the evolution of flight through history. This is an interactive piece that actually those in wheelchairs will even be able to use to walk through and feel how, take your hands, put them out to your sides and walk through and feel what it'd be like to fly and the difference in the air currents and such. Another interactive, using how the Wrights, using the inner tube box, figured out how to make flexible wings. Some of the original tools of the Wrights. And of course, again, the maroon transitioning to the blue, and their trip here to the Outer Banks from Dayton. A lot longer than 70 to 77 to 64 to 168 to 158. And this is one exhibit showing some of the how they like being outside where they can observe birds in flight, but mosquitoes. The Tate sewing machine that was used for the 1900 glider. And of course, progressing through their experiments here. This wind tunnel at one time was outside. It's a reproduction. It was not, you could not go up and touch it. You can see how worn it is from that. Now it's behind glass, but some of the original airfoils used in their wind tunnel experiments have come from the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. The drafting tools, some of the other tools that have been on display before, and some of the stuff that you can touch. And the reproduction of the airfoil, one of the pieces inside that wind tunnel. And just an example of some of the other ways people can learn the history. And then we get to the actual first flight. The coin toss to determine who's going to fly first. And of course, that photo, which I learned today, was the only photo John Daniels ever took in his life. The first, the only photo he ever took in his life. He was just running Orville's camera for him. And it's been the most published photo in history. And then, of course, going on to the after the success here at Big Kill Devil Hill, the first public flight at Le Mans. Now, something that changed that we've learned is that the Paul Garber First Flight Shrine is going to change, and it will no longer. This, of course, is the current inductee. And this will be a changing exhibit with the portrait that is each year's inductee. Then they have digitized all the other portraits, and they will scroll through on this screen. And you'll see why in a moment that's different. And of course, the artifacts that Neil Armstrong had in his pocket of his EVA suit, original Muslim. The left propeller piece when we walked on that first walk on the moon. And of course, now we are going to go into the flight room, which the flight room is now a completely different experience. One thing to note is the glass now of the windows no longer tinted, so it's a much more bright experience. The sound in here is much different than it used to be, with overhead the acoustic foam that's been sprayed, and then the exhibits. But the one thing you notice along the walls, and we'll talk about that interactive screen or that video screen in a moment, but this, which of course shows the progression of their flying machines, the Paul Garber Shrine, those are no longer on display. Those portraits have been put in storage, and the next step is figuring out what's going to happen next after that with those. But they will display the current inductee for 1 year here. Again, digitizing all the portraits so that they can be shown on a rotating basis. But those portraits now in storage over at Fort Raleigh, and plans will be made by the First Flight Society as to what they're going to do next. But in this exhibit here, giving the scale and progressing through, even all the way down to the patent. But then each these artifacts have been placed here in the flight room. The bicycle hub, the 1903 Flyer. Of course, the engine, the original engine crankcase, but they've taken these acrylic pieces to make the full engine. So how it looked, the full engine incorporated into the actual artifact. The broken 1903 propeller. And these exhibits. And I'm actually going backwards as the way things kind of will progress. As we go over to this 10-minute video, which is going to be, it just runs. It's no audio. It just runs, and it's more about the inspirations that the Wright brothers flight brought. And some of the cool things they've done is incorporate even an actual almost recreation of the first flight, how it would look using the original photo, and then incorporating that into an almost, you know, a visual representation of what it would look like if it had been filmed. And of course, with the brighter look in here, you can see the monument, you can see the 3 markers from here, but something that was added was a window was originally in this spot when the visitor center opened, and it was taken out. Well, it was put back in now, so you can see the 4th and final flight of that day from here in the flight room. And one thing was brought up, they're not going to do any flight room talks like they used to where they were in here, and it's because of space, because they were so popular. The space just did not lend itself to be able to do that. And with a lot of the information that was in that flight room talk is all throughout and very easy for visitors to read amongst themselves or learn as they're here, and they're going to do more of the programs to be more oriented outside. They do have a modern sound system in here for talks. This was a neat feature. This area right here, it looks like drops out, and it is. It's actually a ramp, so that if they were to do presentations up here and have interpretive rangers, this drops down and actually turns into a ramp that a wheelchair can go up. So that if you had a ranger in a wheelchair, they could come up here on this. Of course, the raised platform now that the 1903 reproduction that was done by the Wright Experience for the first flight centennial, they took the 1902 glider out, so that opened up a lot of the space in here. That glider now is at the North Carolina Museum of History in Raleigh. This over here, this is a little, almost like a whiteboard, but it's going to be like kind of a rotating series of questions. How do you turn a dream into action? And visitors will be able to use a dry erase marker to write their own thoughts. And this piece here is something that's not been displayed before, and that is the wing fabric from the 1903 flyer. This has not been on display here before. And the Pride over the West muslin that was used on the wings of the original flyer, now on display here. So I'll give you about a 15-minute tour. The first look inside the newly renovated Wright Brothers National Memorial Visitor Center. And the one thing that was pointed out during our tour, I guess it's probably easier to show outside, but inside as well, something you don't see, water stains, there's a reason. It took them 3 times to try and figure out 3 different processes during this renovation to get the exterior and interior of this flat roof with the dome to not leak. And back in July when we had our deluge, it didn't leak. 21 inches of rain and it didn't leak, and they finally found it. So there's your sneak peek of the newly renovated Wright Brothers National Memorial. It'll be opening Saturday to the public. There'll be some special activities. Of course, the weather is not supposed to be great, but they're still going to be doing the special activities outside. And there you go. From the Outer Banks Voice, I'm Sam Walker.